This course is based on a methodology called the Lean Launchpad, and what I'd like to do is introduce you to the overall concepts, and the rest of the course will go into detail on various pieces. This is a picture of a whole variety of books and people who are basically the brain trust behind the Lean Launchpad concept. We have the book, The Lean Startup, which was done by Eric Ries in conjunction with the guy with the white hair, Steve Blank, who is a very successful Silicon Valley entrepreneur who in his retirement life has been spending his time evangelizing about the Lean Startup process because it has become so important for the development of new businesses, especially businesses that are based on technology and science. The guy on the far left is Alex Osterwalder, who developed the concepts of the value proposition design canvas and the business model canvas, which we'll be using as frameworks throughout the course. So the first idea is the idea of value proposition. What are you doing for your customer? And how do you design your product or service to match what they need? In order to do that, you have to address the second important point, which is actually understand your customers, not make assumptions about them, but go out and discover what they need, and that's under the rubric of customer discovery. Through that process, you achieve product market fit, where you identify who needs your product the most and how you need to adjust it to fit with your market. The tools include the business model canvas. You'll also hear about the value proposition design canvas. You will, at some point in your journeys with customers, create what's called a minimum viable product, where you are showing some sort of illustration of what you are doing in order to get feedback from people. And throughout this process, you'll be doing stuff in stages, bit by bit, so that you de-risk as you're going along, as opposed to develop everything in a basement or a garage and then attempt to sell it after spending a lot of time and money. This is another way to look at the Lean Launchpad process. It's a series of steps that you might repeat over and over again. Phase 1 is where you lay out your current thinking about who your customers are and what they need, either on the business model canvas or this other tool that we'll talk about called the value proposition canvas. Phase 2 is really talking to customers to understand their problems. You're going to test the problem. Is what you are addressing even important to your potential customers, and in what way is it important to them? Phase 3 is when you're starting to use your minimum viable product, testing the solution with your customers or with your stakeholders to make sure that it actually fits. And then finally, you're verifying or, if necessary, pivoting. If things aren't working out, now's your chance to make changes. Another way to think about this is that customers are stakeholders. You have that customer discovery part, and you really look at a whole variety of people who play a role relative to your product or service. And you will then validate that relationship in some way. That's where the pivoting comes in, before you've spent significant money. After the fact, then you move into what's called customer creation, where you're actually selling and building the business. So the core point here is that you're going to iterate until you've either validated or invalidated your value proposition. So here's your first principle. You are definitely wrong. I don't know what you're wrong about, but in some way, until you interact with your stakeholders and customers in a deep way beyond the set of people that you may have already been interacting with, you don't know exactly how things will work. I cannot think of any startup team that I've worked with that had everything right from the beginning. This is just part of the process. The second principle is the only way to really know what people need is to talk to them, and to talk to so-called real people, not going into Google, not doing library research or secondary industry research. That's important as well, but the level of granularity and specificity you need does not work in the library. It works in day-to-day interaction with real people, understanding their problems and what they're doing right now to solve those problems. Fourth principle, you can expect to pivot. I don't know how, I don't know in what way, but chances are there will be something where you need to rethink an aspect of your product or service. Pivot has become an in term these days. For some reason, pivoting is better than changing your mind, but it's basically that idea. You are making some sort of adjustment in response to what you've learned from your customers and your market. And then a fourth principle is, as you're going along, you're going to be developing hypotheses or assumptions, and you're going to be developing them around various aspects of your product or service and various aspects of your customers' problems. And so it's a lot like the metaphor of the blind men trying to understand the elephant, or some large object that you only have some experience of pieces of. It's by doing an accumulation of interviews and connections with customers that help you see the patterns and the total picture. What this is going to do is help you achieve your innovation sweet spot. And so what we have here are 4 core questions that you'll be answering through this process. Is your problem and your solution something that actually matters and is desirable to customers? Can you charge them money, or can you charge somebody money? What is the revenue model? Even nonprofits or government entities need some kind of source of revenue in order to keep going. Another thing is, can you really do it? Is it technically feasible? And for people who are doing breakthrough inventions, a lot of times you think you can do it, but you need to go through the full research process and translational research to be sure. And then finally, this trying to understand the market itself. Is the market viable? And all of that together adds up to that sweet spot. There's not really a sequence to this either. What you'll find is people will address various pieces of this either in parallel or again in iterations, going back again and again as you try to optimize an answer to this solution.